I'd like to call to order the Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners regular meeting for December 20, 2017. Roll call.
President Zipfel.
Here.
Vice President Hughes.
Here.
Commissioner Andrus.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
I would like to ask our Township Manager, Aaron Bebro, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening, our last meeting of the year.
Aye.
I asked Aaron to do the pledge because this is our last meeting of the year, and just a small way of saying yet again what a fantastic job he does, as well as the entire staff, not only our uniform police. Thank you, Chief, for everything that all of your entire staff and officers do, and Aaron, everyone who works along with you. I think this township is run fantastically well, and it really is because of your leadership and Chief's leadership and all the other department heads that you have, and right down to the newest employee that you have. So thank you very much for the entire year, and we look forward to another year with the two of you leading us.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Commissioners. Can we adjourn the meeting now?
We are done. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thanks for coming out, folks.
I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
All right. Is there approval for tonight's agenda? Is there a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Andrus. All in favor of approving the agenda that's before you, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Housekeeping item, consent items. Is there a motion to move into the record the consent items that are listed in your agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Vice President Hughes, second by Commissioner Andrus. Those consent items include the Board of Commissioners regular meeting minutes for November 15, the Board of Commissioners workshop meeting minutes of December 6, the Treasurer's report for the month of December, and bills payable, paid bills in the amount of $132,812.08, and unpaid bills, $220,336.85. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor of moving those items into the record, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, those are moved into our record. All right, citizens' comments. Folks, I suspect that there's going to be some citizens' comments about our discussion item tonight. So I'm going to ask that anyone who has something other than the request for the zoning change regarding the 3515 Cowpath Road, if you have something other than that agenda item that you'd like to discuss that is on the agenda, please come up to the podium. All right, I don't see anyone running up to the podium. So we're going to move on to our discussion item. Aaron, I guess you and I could probably start off with this, just so those of you who are familiar with this matter. There has been a requested rezone for the property at issue 3515 right along Cowpath Road. We've had, I think it's one or two public hearings on this. The application has been pending. I know that residents have given considerable feedback to the commissioners and staff, and this evening, at the request of the applicant, we are going to have a further discussion, presumably looking for feedback from your commissioners as to our opinions, pros and cons. Tonight is not a decision-making evening. It is, however, an opportunity for the applicant to hear the positions or considerations of the commissioners if they so choose, and also one not last opportunity, but one more opportunity for residents, if they are interested, to come up to the podium and give us their thoughts. Presumably the applicant at that point, sometime soon, I leave it up to the applicant, will probably then approach us as to whether they are going to put this on the agenda sometime in the near future. Of course, we will make that public to every single person, not only here, but it's always on our agenda, and we notify the public as best we can. Aaron, did I cover everything?
You did, Mr. President. I think the only thing left to be said is that it would be nice if a member from the applicant's team could just maybe go to the podium and give us a quick overview of what was discussed. We understand, like Mr. President said, we had two public hearings roughly a year ago, so maybe a quick summary, and then I think discussion will ensue.
Yes, thank you. For the record, my name's Frank Bartle, and I represent the applicant. Just to refresh your recollection, my client is Envision Land Use, and here with me tonight is Bob Rosenthal, who's the principal of Envision Land Use with us. Oh, thank you, Tom. Also here with us tonight is John Kennedy, who is our land planner. Both of those gentlemen certainly would be available to answer any questions that you may have. The property in question is better known as the Waller property, and that's because the people who own the property are here, and their name is Walter. The property is located at 3515 Cowpath Road, and as you can see behind me, the property in question is outlined on the plan that you see, which of course is not the site plan. We have a site plan as well for you this evening. The rezone request is for the entire site of 34.9 acres. Currently, 3 acres of that is zoned RA1 residential district, which is what we're asking the zoning to be, and 31.9 acres is the LI light industrial zoning, and we're asking that the zoning be rezoned to RA1 entirely. So not only the 3 acres that we have, but the 31 plus acres as well. We're going to use the property, if we are fortunate enough to receive your approval, under the cluster provision of your ordinance, which would allow us to build 64 lots, 64 homes, each a single-family detached dwelling on property of approximately 12,000 square foot in size. Now, the hearings in question took place in December of 2016 and in early 2017. And at that time, we presented the board with a lot of information concerning the property, particularly the fact that the property, with its LI light industrial zoning, that zoning is probably not suitable for this area, especially in light of the fact that it is of modest size compared to similar properties that are zoned similarly to that in other locations in other communities where the properties are much bigger and allow for a more suitable use. Also, we showed the board information that your road system was probably not sufficient for the LI use at this particular location. So it was a size of the lot and the location of the lot that didn't make that appropriate. If you'll recall, at the time, we also had a plan that showed you where all of the residential zoning was that surrounded the property. And suffice it to say, the record would indicate what the exact perimeter measurements are in terms of the adjacency to residential uses, but it's fair to say that the vast majority of the property is surrounded by property that's used for a residential use, and therefore we think that the RA1 residential district zoning is more appropriate for the property. We also gave you a fiscal analysis with respect to the property, and also gave you some information concerning traffic impact as well, all of which could be described as well within the normal bounds of what would happen at for a development such as this, such that it would be in conformity with that which you normally experience for what we propose. When we left here, the board was going to consider our request and would continue to receive feedback from the community, as Mr. Zipfel has suggested this evening, and certainly that has been the case. After the past several months, we wanted to come back and hear from you as to what we may do additionally, or what we can provide additionally, or what questions we can answer for you before you make a decision with respect to the matter. I would respectfully suggest that we would be happy to hear from you this evening. As you've suggested, you may comment. and then we'll be happy to provide a response either in writing or to come back to you at a future time and give you the answers to whatever additionally you may have suggested that we do in the interim. We're certainly receptive to working in a cooperative mode with the township. We think that our project and our proposed project would be good for Hatfield Township. There were an awful lot of people that were out here at one time or another in support of the application, and we think that we will provide you with whatever you want, and as a consequence to that, in terms of information, that you'll be convinced that this is a legitimate project and that the zoning for this location is more appropriately residential than the industrial that it's currently zoned, or I'm sorry, the light industrial that it's currently zoned. If there's anything else that you have or would like us to answer, Mr. Zipfel, we'll be happy to do that.
I have, before tonight, what I did was I gathered the feedback that I received from residents, pro and con. And so I'm prepared this evening to walk through the different items so that if the applicant and also the residents have, maybe you've heard some of these concerns, but maybe some of them, you share some of those concerns, but so that you know the things that are, from my perspective, what I'm hearing. Before I do that, though, and certainly I'll encourage any other commissioner to speak as well, or resident, I just want everyone to understand something. Tonight is not a decision-making evening. I know I said that before. Please understand that one of our major roles, when I say us, I mean the five of us, is to always keep an open mind as to every one of these projects. That means if I mention something that you find disagreeable to you, that is because we've heard that from other people. We're just going to ask you to be civil about it, and we're not looking for people to, this is not supposed to be a combative discussion as to pros and cons. This is to kind of discuss what residents are telling us and what some of our issues or concerns are. So I have no reason to think that anyone's going to act anything other than with great dignity and civility, but that is one of our major responsibilities here, to ensure that that takes place in every meeting, but especially when we have a decision that is of some significance. So having said that, I don't know if anyone else wants to, if I'm stepping on toes, if anyone else has any other comments.
Commissioner, just one thing. It might be helpful. I'll have the plan that was proposed at the original public hearing. We'll have that on the slide that was provided by the applicant, just to frame the discussion for the commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay with that? Sure.
Frank, if you'll bear with me, I have a number of items specifically written down here. Again, pros and cons. In no particular order, and this is just merely the way people have presented it to us, to me in particular. The concern is that with so many homes that there would be additional traffic on Cowpath, okay? And I'm not looking for commentary from the applicant. Residents, after I'm done, feel free to come up and address any issues or concerns that you hear me mention, something you agree with or disagree with. That there are too many homes in the sense that it's going to put too much traffic on Cowpath, in particular because the stretch of roadway from the development down towards, kind of really down towards St. Maria Goretti, is not one of the soundest of areas. It's kind of thin. It doesn't have a strong side. There's something of a dangerous intersection at Durstein and Cowpath. On a personal level, I'll tell you that I go through that intersection every single day, and it's difficult to make a left-hand turn if you're on Durstein getting onto Cowpath to go north onto Cowpath. One of the other items that had been mentioned at a previous meeting was that homes will, and this is kind of difficult to articulate without sounding almost contrarian. Homes will bring children, and more children in our school system is not something that we're looking to encourage. That's probably not the best way to describe it, but the concern was that you have more kids. There's already a lot of kids in the North Penn School District, and so now you have additional children. Whereas if it remained LI, then it was commercial, then the school district doesn't have that burden. Other people had mentioned that they want it to be open space. Folks, for those of you who have ever gone through the rezone process that we've gone through over the last years, please understand that we are not up here deciding whether the township is going to purchase this piece of property. Oftentimes, people will come to us and say, oh, well, someone's trying to rezone it. Why don't you just go buy that piece of property? These properties are not something that the township can afford, and that is not a mechanism, that's not a viable alternative for us to say, okay, we're going to take our general fund money and spend more than a few dollars, and I don't know what purchase prices are, and it's not fair of me to articulate that publicly right now. It's none of our business. But that is not an option for us to say, oh, well, you know, we're going to just go buy that and turn it into Hatfield property. Concern how it would interplay with the temple being so close, in the sense that the temple does not have a large piece of property, and just the interaction between having a religious institution and maybe there being a buffer between the two. Obviously, that comes from folks who are members of the temple. That's kind of the cons. The pros include many people said that they'd rather have homes than industry in their area. They'd rather have a house as opposed to a commercial building that's that's got a warehouse or something similar related to that. Others came to me, and actually those who saw the meetings or saw the design liked that the applicant had articulated or shown open space around what I guess is kind of the southern, and then over towards I'm not sure if that's the east or western portion of the property. At least 2 or 3 people came to me, and we had a very lengthy conversation about property rights, which is kind of a completely different level associated with our decision, meaning that what does the existing owner of a piece of property have? What are their property rights? And as far as what authority does the township have to, well, the phrase I received was to interfere with those property rights. And again, I'm just articulating what was presented to us. Someone who is familiar with the Planning Commission said that they thought that when the Montgomery County Planning Commission approved it, they thought that we were a rubber stamp. I explained to them that that is not an accurate statement. Quite the opposite. That theirs is more of guidance and suggestion. Ours is the ultimate decision making. And then someone else, I guess the last observation that somebody made to me was they wanted to know if they thought if we rejected the application, would something go there? In other words, what would happen? And I told them that I am working off the assumption that if we approve this, then obviously there would be homes, and if we do not approve this, that the family is not going to sit on that piece of property and allow it to just sit there for forever, that something is going to be done with that property. So then the question becomes, what would happen there? If we are restricting it to residential, then it is light industrial, and what is light industrial? And then I had that conversation as to what would be possible structures that would go into the piece of property. So, Frank, that's the feedback that I've received, that I've taken in all of those and considered all of those. So I don't know if that specifically gives you and your applicant guidance as to some of the concerns that the residents have. Understand that our role throughout this entire process is always to be, whatever their concerns are, those have to be our concerns, and then we just have to use our best judgment when the time ultimately comes to decide what's in the best interest of Hatfield.
Right. And first of all, I greatly appreciate the fact that you did take the time to do exactly that and give us the pros and cons, so to speak, with respect to that, and that you took your time to do that. And I thank you for the organized manner in which you've given that to us, because it gives me an opportunity to just go over just very briefly tonight. But I really do think we're going to have to take a little time with respect to one or two of the items, certainly that you mentioned, that we're not in a position to necessarily say, hey, we have the answer to that this evening. Let me just go down the list. The traffic, yeah, there certainly is traffic anytime you put a new home in the area, and that certainly is the case. Vacant properties don't generate traffic, but this is going to be used for something. I think what we did the last time we were here was we showed the comparison between what could happen. We did show a plan with an industrial use. You have had issues here before where there was some sort of a hybrid suggested to the board some years ago with regard to a commercial facility, and I believe it was 52 units at that point in time in addition to a commercial facility, and the board declined to do that in light of the fact that there would be more traffic, and of course that was substantially more traffic than what we would look at here with regard to the what we had presented. But I'll rely on those numbers that we presented the last time. I don't really have them at the tip of my tongue right now, but you know, certainly they're part of the record as to what the traffic is, and we'll certainly provide that to the board again. The issue with regard to the intersection of Durstein and Cowpath, I do recall that there was some discussion with respect to a traffic light. Mr. Zipfel, if that's the intersection that we were talking about with respect to the traffic light, and I'm not sure, maybe Mr. Rosenthal remembers whether that's the particular one, but I do think we were talking about doing the traffic light at that location, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Bob? Okay, so that would be something that we would. I'm not sure whether we had that discussion with you or not, but I think we had that discussion, I should say. So we do know that there was a traffic light that was involved here, and we'll come better prepared to address that particular issue or put it to you in writing before we would come back. As to the children in the North Penn school system, if you recall, there was some significant testimony at the time that we were here concerning Hatfield and its contribution of school children to the North Penn system, and I believe you ran pretty much behind the curve in terms of the amount of children that you had placed in the school system in comparison with some of the other communities that are part of North Penn. Certainly, you know, children are part of any residential development that is not a retirement community, and so as a consequence, it would be expected that there would be some children coming into the district, and certainly residential never pays as a classification of property, never pays for the education of the children. If it did, you wouldn't have the necessity of commercial and industrial real estate taxes because they go into the school budget as well. So you can never really get a handle just by looking at the residential taxes and what's paid with respect to the students. But if you take a look at Hatfield in terms of its total population, and you are going to have houses that continue to be built here somewhere, I would respectfully suggest that Hatfield does more than its share with regard to the contribution of taxes in comparison with the number of school children that it sends to the North Penn School District. So I don't think from a Hatfield standpoint you really have to worry about overburdening the school district. And I think we provided evidence to that effect. I think that was part of what we had given you at that time. With regard to open space, yeah, I mean, I can't tell you that anything will have less impact than vacant property that is open space, and if that were true, then Hatfield would continue to be one large field, as would all of our communities, and we'd have no place to live. And I understand that people suggest that, hey, why don't you do it as open space and the like, and I appreciate your comments in that regard, because everybody in every neighborhood would first opt for the open space as opposed to any type of development, and you're right, that becomes completely unaffordable for any community, and you're wise to look at it in that fashion. The temple issue with respect to the temple being close by and the buffering issue is something that I really can't answer tonight. I think that the first thing that we would do is we'll approach the temple and we will get a handle on exactly what the concerns are, and we'll discuss exactly what we can do in that regard and see if we can come to some sort of of an agreement to move in the right direction with respect to that. And I know Mr. Rosenthal and I have talked about that. We went around and we looked at the various uses, and I think with respect to all of the other uses, you'll see by the layout of the lots as we've configured them, we've taken care of, I believe, in large measure, the concerns of everybody else, but that may be a part of the plan that we have to take another look at.
I think it's a good point.
Let me say that now, as I move into the pro list, that's a lot easier to handle, because I think we agree with a lot of what you've said in that regard. First of all, the home rather than industry, I think that goes without saying. That's been the nature of our pitch to the board from the beginning, and especially in light of the surrounding uses. The open space on our plan has been placed in the areas that it has been specifically to be more receptive to the neighbors that are in the immediate vicinity. You'll see that we've handled our access routes, I think, properly in that regard. There was an issue with regard to the emergency access, and as I've told neighbors, when you deal with emergency, and whether you're talking about police or fire or whatever the case may be, ambulance and the like, everything becomes an emergency access when it's needed. So the idea there is just to create a reinforced area so that in the event somebody has to get through there in an emergency, they can do so, but we're not looking at putting a roadway between those two residential homes, which is an important thing. Because if it was more of an industrial use than a residential use, you would have to calculate where the access points were for purposes of bringing in the trucks and the deliveries and the like, and what roadways were better served in that regard. Whereby I think as we've laid it out for the residential community, I think we can easily handle the residential traffic on the 2 points that we've indicated on the plan. So I think we're in good shape with regard to that. The property rights, I think we set forth to you what the law is. We do believe, and the township has a responsibility to zone the property in a rational way. It is our impression from having been out there and having seen the location and seen what's around it, that this is a very small area to be zoned LI or used LI at this particular location, and there's only a small number of potential users that fit on the property. They would be not in conformance with the uses that surround it if we had to go in the industrial direction. And I think at the same time, it would be difficult for us to get industrial users in light of the size and the location of the property, as we've indicated. And certainly, we agree with the argument as far as property rights is concerned, and I think that is a pro in our favor. But you have to be the ultimate decider of that issue. As far as the Montgomery County Planning Commission, I did neglect to mention that both the County Planning Commission and the Local Planning Commission recommended that this property be rezoned pursuant to our request. But again, that's a recommendation, as you pointed out, and not a decision. The ultimate decision is with this board, and certainly we understand and respect that. And then finally, what would go on this property? Well, obviously, it would have to conform with zoning. That would mean that for the vast majority of it, it would have to be used in an industrial fashion. And I do believe that one of the exhibits showed exactly what could be built there from an industrial standpoint, and there were calculations done with respect to traffic in that regard as well. It wouldn't be pretty for the neighbors, in our opinion. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and I guess maybe we'll have various opinions on that. But our position is that residential is more conforming with residential. So that's basically what I can say for tonight, and we will be happy to provide the information that I've suggested, and we'll be happy to make the contacts that you've suggested or that you've indicated may be prudent for us to do, such as the neighboring temple.
Thank you. I don't know if there's any other Commissioners.
So you mentioned that you were getting feedback from residents. I'm sure there was some feedback that said, hey, don't build it. Others might have said, hey, it'd be nice if you would have done something. You have a list of what residents have suggested to improve the plan?
Yeah, actually, I did have the opportunity of speaking with some of the residents. If you recall, in one of the earlier versions of the plan, where this roadway was and came down here, there was an issue as to whether that would be a portion of our plan that would. Whether that would be a portion of our plan that would have access to Cowpath Road, and obviously we made it only emergency access. We also did offer that we would be willing to give the fee simple title to the neighbors at that location, because we want to make sure that they understand we're not interested in putting any major access route in that location, and we are certainly willing to give them that property. But I believe that the condition was that it be agreeable to the township from an emergency services standpoint, and whether we give them the fee simple title and then you retain an easement over it, or however you want to do it, we would do that in the land development process, but we would make that guarantee to them. There was also an issue with respect to the widening, I believe, of a portion of Cowpath Road, and I went out and I took a look at that, and I believe we have an understanding as to what we would have to do in that regard. Again, that would be handled in the land development process, but we would be agreeable to doing that, and the things that we've talked about, we did suggest to the people that came here, not to the township because it would be improper to do so, but to the other neighbors that came here, that we would be willing to file a covenant that would take care of these concerns, so that we were obligated to do that in the land development process, rather than just telling them, hey, trust us, rezone the property, and then you'll see if we do it or not. We're willing to guarantee that that be done in a covenant, and Mr. Rosenthal has taken on that obligation, as have the Walters. They agree to do that. So we'll file that covenant, and then in the event that you do rezone the property, then all of those conditions then become binding on us as a contractual matter with the township, rather than through the land development process. But we won't ask you to comment on that without the advice of your solicitor, because we don't want to create a contract zoning situation. So that was part of what we had discussed. We also had discussed limiting the access to the two locations that are listed there as those being the more important locations and the more appropriate locations, I should say, with respect to the ingress and egress of traffic. Part of it also was the open space areas. You can see where the open space is located. The mobile home development is off to the side of that. As I look at the plan, it's off to my right is the mobile home development, and as you can see, there's a large portion of the open space that exists there, and also some of the stormwater management and open space that buffers from what used to be sort of I believe a trolley line of some sort that was there, and the residential properties that are across the street. So what we've attempted to do was take care of the residential on this side, take care of the residential, as you can see, that is on this side, with respect to the widening, the taking care of that, and the handling of the of what could be an access route and will only be emergency, and the appropriate handling of the access route over here, so as to take care of these residences, taking care of all those residences up there with the buffering on our property as well, going across. And the one remaining area then would be the area of the temple that Mr. Ziffel had spoken to, and that's the area that we will address. So we think as we've moved forward, we've taken into consideration the concerns of the entire neighborhood, and we'll continue to do that based upon the comments that were made this evening.
I would imagine residents that own a home between the exit proposal and the left might suggest to you, what about me? I understand providing a buffer to the property on the right, property in the back, but what about me? You haven't done anything to satisfy any concerns that I might have with regard to buffering from the homes.
Okay,
property line.
can I ask you to please show me on the plan if Aaron, do you have, who has the?
Right there, Aaron. Those properties in there.
Okay. All right.
That section and off to the right.
Okay.
Those that don't abut that fire emergency ramp would say, hey, it's fine that you're doing all this for the other.
Yeah,
properties.
if you take a look on the plan, and you may not be able to see it there because this is not a land development plan. It's
Right.
merely a sketch plan for purposes of this hearing, but it's pretty good. I mean, it's certainly drawn to scale. You can see that we have an area along both that's a fairly thick buffer area that we intend to create there. Now, again, at that location, you're buffering residential from residential, but
So I look at that, so you're not providing any buffering for the property on the right, because you really don't need it, because there's enough of a distance, right?
right.
All you're doing is really put me in a box. Nice, but have the residents in those areas expressed any concern for any desire to do something different than what you've got on a plan?
I have spoken directly with only one of the homeowners that's along that area, and we talked primarily about the access route and the widening of Cowpath. I have not spoken with with all of the people that live along that area.
Buffering is either distance or trees, both. Right. Some of the residents in that area might say, well, geez, you know, you can, one house, 64 houses with a cluster, but if it was just zoned RA1, what would that be?
If it's what, I'm sorry?
If it was just zoned RA without cluster, what would
You know, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure that whether I had that calculation or not the last time I was here. Ken, do you recall?
I don't believe that you offered as part of your presentation any prospective number.
Okay, then we don't know as we stand here tonight. We could provide it.
Point two, correct.
that by choice or by zoning that you have to provide enough open space? Punish if you're hard or by zoning?
And just so that everybody that's viewing understands, when John says he was given instructions, he's talking about being the land planner for Mr. Rosenthal. We weren't given any instructions by the township.
Not by me, anyway.
The open space, was that designed as a buffer for the trailer park or a buffer for the development? Could switch some of that property around behind the residential.
And I'm talking from up this position. I would appreciate if you actually reached out and knocked on those individuals' doors. What could I do to make this?
Any other questions, comments? How about we open it up to, Frank, not to ask if you can step aside for a moment, but how about we
Absolutely.
open it
Be
up
happy
to
to.
residents? If any residents have any questions or comments on the application, the process, or what has been discussed tonight? Yes, Bill?
This is in regards to the development in the township. We have over 100 houses going in where the biblical school is. We have the biblical school seminar, or where their cottages are. They want to build 16 or 13 houses in that development. We have Balmy's development, which is 100 acres. It's mostly all residential. The zoning is already there already. And there is a petition out here, which I gave you before. There's 126 signatures on this to keep the zoning what it was. And also that Mr. Rosenthal's attorney was at the hearing, and he said that the reason why it was turned down years ago was that the Clarkie was going to buy that piece of ground, and he wanted to put a commercial store on there, and Mr. Clark wanted to sell the rest of the property to houses. But Mr. John Jennings didn't say that. He was wrong when he said that he wanted to change the zoning. So, okay. There's also that Frank Bardell said that there's residential housing on both sides, but he didn't tell us that that was zoned industrial, light industrial, because the Walterses and our property, we had to go to the zoning board to get houses put on those properties. Also, that there are children that go to the school, they can't get to the Hatfield Elementary School, they have to be taken all the way over to Township Township for their schooling. And that isn't very good. They should be allowed to go to their local schools. Also, that there was 4 businesses. 2 of them tried to get a hold of the developer when he had the development to try and buy it piece of ground to different industrial or uses that they wanted to put on that property. But the realtor would not call them back and give them any kind of an answer. Okay, there was another remark was said that Mrs. Walters got up at the last hearing and said there's enough industry in Hatfield Township. That's the reason why we don't have a tax increase in the last 4 years, because all the industry that we have in our township, and we're growing more industry all the time. So that is an untrue statement. So, and also that Mrs. Walters made the comment at the hearing that Mr. Walters, when he was living, gave up farming because he couldn't make any money. That's a false statement, because my dad bought 10 acres from Union National Bank, and all the houses where Ray Matzer lives was all sold off by the Union National Bank because he was default on his mortgage. if we have more development, that means we're going to have more police, and we're going to have maintain more roads. If we sell it in industrial, and the people would like to buy it, would put a couple garages up or in a warehouse. There's a fellow would like to put a greenhouse on that property, but nobody would contact them to see if they would subdivide it. Also, all this housing is, there's a high tension line that runs right across the corner, and there's a water tank up there, and there's cell towers in Franconia Township, and 1,000 feet down from the Walters houses, there's a super fund. There's 2 quarries that were filled up years ago before we had any regulations, and Aldolfer and Frank filled up these 2 quarries with garbage and trash, and that is still on the Superfund of Pennsylvania. So, you know, who would want to buy a house where all the Superfund is, where all the towers are, the water tank, and all that? It doesn't make much sense. I'd like to give you
Bill, all right, is this this is similar to the one that we've received, right? This is, or are these additional names, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, there's additional names on there. There was one thing more that that's about all I have, okay?
Okay, thank you. Any other resident comments, questions? Do you have a bit? Unless one of the other commissioners has a problem with it, we'll let you speak briefly, but if it means anything to you from my perspective, I'm only one of 5. The issue of whether our decision is what's in the best interest of Hatfield Township. It's not to delve into whether somebody made a phone call to a realtor and whether that realtor made a phone call back. To be blunt, that issue is irrelevant to me. If you feel, notwithstanding, feel that it's important to respond to Mr. Forrest, that's fine, but honestly, if that's one of the considerations, I think we're missing the point.
To Tom, I expressed Tom's view. It doesn't matter to me.
I mean, I appreciate your coming, and my apologies, I guess, Frank, if you were anticipating that, and but you know, that's not really a consideration. Whether you or anyone else returned a phone call is irrelevant to me. Good point, and I think you're actually, as I think about it, your presence here demonstrates otherwise. So we're singularly focused. I didn't even think of it that way. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Gail Walter. I live on Township Line Road, the opposite end from the park. Mr. Forrest died. I first met him when my husband and I moved in '65. Mr. Forrest was the first person to come to my house and take me to vote. And then he brought me and the baby back home, and his mom watched my baby. And I remember that he's always been a very good neighbor to us, And Mr. Forrest and I greeted, went over to, I believe it was Copesville, when the high power line is to go through, the roadways to go through. They had maps like this there, and they showed there will be a red light from Copesville onto Township Line Road out to Sodderton Pike will be another township, will be another light, and down there at Biggie's Tavern is the other light. So there are going to be lights to come out onto the cow path, out onto Sodderton Pike, and onto Elroy Road. So the lights matter not, they are going up when the road is ever completed. That's the main drag, is the road is not being completed from Copesville out. Also, as far as Mr. Forrest, we've all played quoits together, we've all talked together. They know our family, we know their family. There is nothing between us except for friendship. I think Mr. Forrest has worked very hard. I remember Mr. Forrest when he was a truck driver, and I worked at G.C. Murphy, and he would be delivering goods to us. So that's how far back we go, even before I was married. The contention on going out onto the cow path, my whole family has dealt with that road. Also, we have dealt with mobile homes coming out of the park and then trying to make a left-hand turn onto Durstein Road. Now that's a lot of fun. You've got 2 lines of traffic being stopped. And I'm waiting for somebody to slide into the back of the trailer, or the man not being that great on driving, pulling a trailer, but they get around. That's been happening for years. Nobody says anything about that either. We have housing there on Minninger Road. That's gone up. We have housing at the end going out the cow path there by the train station. They put a light there. It seems to be working fine. That's all new housing down there. We've got housing all over the place. Why? Why is it being held up? We have worked, my children have gone, my grandchildren have gone to the schools. 60 homes is not going to add any more than what is coming through from Franconia, what's coming through from Sodderton, what's coming through from Copesville, and coming out off the 309. We have factories going out my driveway. You are a police officer. You sit in my driveway. I beg you to sit in my driveway. Do I not? I beg you to sit in my driveway to get the Budweiser trucks, to get the R&L trucks. Our animals are killed. I am petrified for the grandchildren. They are older now, they drive, so now I really am petrified because you're coming up a hill, you're going down the hill, and we have 25 miles an hour, am I right? Is that road 25 miles an hour? I haven't, not even me, and I'm a great offender, I will do 30. We'll do 30. Because if I don't, I'm going to get run over by the tractor trailer behind me or the one that's hogging the road coming up. And as for the water tower across the street, that doesn't bother me. And the people from the church walk around because I am told in their culture there is no boundary line for them. They only own their homes. They don't own the land. So I go out and I say, hello, I have steers. Don't feed my steers. I don't know what you're giving them. And if you're giving them hot peppers, I'm going to have some very upset steers. So, yeah, there is concern. But it's not to being drug out as long as this is being drug out. I don't complain about the people walking through for the trailer park. These women are jogging. I'd rather have them jogging there than on Durstein Road at 4 o'clock in the morning with baby carriages, because they don't use the sidewalks, they use the road. These are my concerns, and maybe because you don't live there, they're not your concerns. But I would rather have 60 homes, and the American family is only 2.5 children. I don't know how you get the half, but they have gotten the half. It's 2.5 children that the American families have. I'd rather have them than the industrial park that I have on Solderton Pike. Now, they're good men. I've talked to a lot of them. They'll stop and they'll let me out because I can't get out otherwise. So my concern is not pollution that is across the street that has been there before I was married and will be there when I'm dead. And it bothers nobody else. They cannot build on it. It can never be built on. It's contaminated. That's not my concern. My concern is my side of the street. My brother-in-law's side of the street. My husband being born on that land, living there all his 77 years. We're married 55 years, so I've been there quite a while, and I'm used to it. I will get used to homes behind me, and I'd much rather have them than I would an industrial park. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other residents, considerations or concerns? Oh, we do have someone else. Yes, sir.
Herbert Frederick, and I live on Berge Road. And in the event that this property is rezoned residential, I find it hard to believe that the developer would tell the people buying homes that they're going to be living next to a major truck route in the future. Whenever the state decides to finish the connector route between the Turnpike and 309. And when that happens, there will be major truck traffic through there, and then there will be complaints about trucks starting and stopping at the traffic light on Cowpath and elsewhere. I think that will be a problem for a future board. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Not seeing anyone else run up to the podium, we're going to close out our discussion item for the evening. We want to thank the applicant for coming out and also thank very much the residents who have come out. We know that you've come out a number of times. We see some familiar faces and the comments. And it's not just the comments here. It's the comments that you've reached out for us electronically, by email, telephone, stopping us wherever you've seen us, giving us the feedback, because if you don't give us that, then we start making decisions in a vacuum, and that's not our role, and that's not how these things are supposed to work. So thank you to everyone who's done that. Thanks to all the people in the room. That means you took the time out of your day to come here and listen or come up and speak, and that is all we ask for at Hatfield, so it's great. All right. If there's nothing else, we're going to move forward and actually have a vote on our budget. For those of you who are interested to see what your Hatfield taxes or the millage rate's going to be, feel free to stick around.
That way everybody's here?
I'm sensing everyone's going to run out the door. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right.
Take care. Have a good holiday.
All right. Thank you. Those of you who are leaving, have a great holiday and come back again. We like visitors. All right, we're going to move ahead with our, we have 5 action items tonight. The first, I guess it's 3 of them are related to our budget. First is ordinance number 674, and that is the 2018 Hatfield Township budget adoption. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Thomas, second by Vice President Hughes. Aaron, do you want to walk us through
Sure.
these one by one?
Thanks, Mr. President. Should I be offended that everyone left right before I start talking?
No, I was doing all the talking, so clearly it was me who ran him out the door.
I'm honored that they left. Commissioners, we sat through a hour too long presentation about a month ago, so I think I added 50 slides to the presentation. What I'd like to do tonight before we vote is just a quick summary on what we talked about a month ago. It was
Aaron, you got a
about-
100-slide presentation there.
I do, which we are not going to go through.
Okay, good.
That was the same presentation. I have a summary for you, Commissioner Andrews. I know you prefer summaries. And if you like this 1-minute version, I'd be happy to make this my main presentation next year, if the board is okay with that.
Yes, that looks good.
So, residents like the long or short version? Thank you, Tina.
There we
Good
go.
answer.
Very diplomatic, very diplomatic.
Much better. We'll go with the short version.
Larry over there.
So, to summarize, the budget for Hatfield Township 2018 approved by the commissioners, crafted by the commissioners, supported by the commissioners. First bullet point, no tax increase, 4th straight year in Hatfield Township that we've been able to accomplish such a feat. Increased funding for public safety, infrastructure, parks improvements. Overall expenses increased only 1%. We're hiring 2 additional police officers. We're buying more vehicles to equip our department. Volunteer firefighters in Hatfield Township will pay less in taxes in 2018. The commissioners lowered the taxes for volunteer firefighters up to as much as $570 for those individual volunteer firefighters that are active and live in the township. The township is going to invest over $800,000 into paving roads throughout the community, the most amount ever. We're going to expand the parking at Schweiker Park to make that a safer facility, and to improve the weekends for all of our residents in that area that deal with a lot of the tournament traffic and parking in 2018. We're going to roll out a new website in 2018, hopefully by the end of January. We'll talk about that a little bit more next month, but this is a little bit of a preview of that. We're going to put in some dog park improvements. We're going to make water fountains there for our furry fellows, as well as some of the folks that use our facilities down there, so the water fountains for both the people and the dogs. Better lighting to make it safer. We're going to expand pickleball, which we've done several times over the past few years, and we're going to do it again in 2018 to accommodate a growing group. And all of that without raising taxes. We are also going to be completing the much talked about Frick's Trail that we have discussed at length for several years. We've put in 1 phase of it. We have permission now from DEP to do the other phase, and we anticipate total permission from DEP in the next few months. So we look for 2018 to complete the entire trail connection, the Fricks to Chestnut Street, to Hatfield Borough and back, which will be a great connection. What do we think of the short version?
Not bad.
Not bad.
We'll have time for our executive session afterwards.
I think so.
That's
one,
right.
one thing I want to point out, though, too, commissioners and for the public, I know there's a resident here that lives on one of the homes on Orvilla near Cowpath. We all know that we have a grant application in with PennDOT. For whatever reason, almost every grant program has been awarded in 2017 except the one that we are waiting for. We are told that hopefully in January, but we were told in April and May and in June and July that this would happen as well. But I really am hopeful. I know all the commissioners here are keeping fingers crossed that the township receives that funding. I did point out to that resident, just to remind everyone that may be listening or interested, that at our budget workshop we did have a discussion. If we do not get the grant, the commissioners will have a serious discussion about what the township can do without the aid of the state to alleviate some of the concerns from those 3 very cooperative residents in Hatfield, so we can further along that realignment of a very dangerous intersection at Cowpath and Orvilla. So just one other thing, not specifically in the budget, we're hoping to get grant funding, but if not, the township has, commissioners have done a great job over the past few years, putting the township in a great financial position to where if projects like that do come up, we could be financially in a position to do something where we weren't several years ago. So this is a good budget crafted by the commissioners, no tax increase, better public safety, better community. Thank you.
Thank you, that's right. Fantastic job, thank you. All right, there's a motion on the table of ordinance 674. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of ordinance 674, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Next is ordinance number 675, which is actually the actual establishment of the 2018 taxes with no increase, keeping the same millage. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Thomas. Any, oh, I was going to say it was, yes, sorry, I thought I mentioned the wrong commissioner.
Make that motion.
That's right, that's right. All right, so any questions or comments, Aaron? This is just actually setting the millage rate, right?
Yep, same as 17. Same
Sorry for
millage
sorry for the interruption. I thought I had maybe mentioned the wrong commissioner at the wrong time.
Buzzers to ring in, I think they would have been Earl.
It was a little Jeopardy-like, I have to tell you. Maybe we should be light up spots right underneath each person. All right, we have a motion, ordinance 675, setting the millage rates is the same as last year. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Next is our fee amendments for the 2018 Aquatic Center. Is there a motion for approval of Resolution 17-22?
It's not working.
Motion by Commissioner Andrews.
Second.
Second by Vice President Hughes. Aaron, if you want to walk us through this one, although it's
sure.
kind of housekeeping.
No, very simply, Mr. President, the Pool Advisory Board recommended to the commissioners that the fees for the Aquatic Center be raised to flat 5% for all season pass members, resident and non-residents. Commissioner Andrews pointed out last month and several times throughout the years that the commissioners made an effort to reduce the fees for residents of Hatfield over the past few years, and those still remain very low, just a 5% increase across the board for both passes in 18. And we hope for a drier and hotter summer in 18 than we had in 17.
All right, that's good. All right, I don't think we can make that a part of the resolution, though.
I wish you could.
All right, with that, I'll call the question. All in favor of Resolution 17-22, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Next, Resolution 17-23. This is the firefighter tax relief guidelines. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Commissioner Rogers, second by Vice President Hughes. Aaron, is this a distinction from the reduction that we have for volunteer firemen?
This was a requirement within the legislation. Remember, the board approved a few months ago the ordinance which enacted this tax relief for our volunteer firefighters. Within that legislation, it said that each community with this this enactment would now have to pass a resolution just outlining the process.
That's
So
right.
we discussed with the two fire presidents how this is going to look. How do you become eligible as a volunteer firefighter? What do you need to do in order to qualify, which is laid out in this resolution. So early 2018, we'll be able to process these refunds, and the firefighters will pay less in taxes because of the commissioner's efforts.
Any questions, comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of Resolution 17-23, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. All right, our last action item. Is there a motion for approval with regard to the pedestrian crossing Maple Sidewalk Improvement Payment Number 2, Oliveri and Associates, in the amount of $52,401.80?
So moved.
Motion by Vice President Hughes. Second by Commissioner Rogers. Aaron, I'm assuming that this is a housekeeping item, payment number 2 as it reads.
Right, this is part of the Fricks Trail improvements. We received a $100,000 grant from the county. We were actually the first community in the county to receive this grant, the Munco 2040. It was to improve the Fricks Trail, the walkability of the township. We have the sidewalks that went in on Maple Avenue in Commissioner Rogers' ward that he bikes often over there and gives me good feedback. We paid for those already. This is for the pedestrian crossing at Orvilla and drawing a blank. Or Orvilla, we'll go with Orvilla.
It's on our bill.
In Independence, thank you. The pedestrian crossing's in. If you drive by, you'll see the signage is up, the crossing's in. We have it bagged for now until the trail's open, and we will then open it up. But this is to pay for those improvements, along with the grant that we received. There'll be one more additional payment that the board will need to approve probably next month, but it's only for roughly $3,000-4,000, so we paid for the lion's share of the project.
All right, with that, I'll call a question. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Manager's report.
Thanks, Mr. President. One just public notice item, and then I have one additional item that just popped up today that I just want to bring to the board's attention, and I will need approval from the board. It's just a housekeeping item. But first one is, we just went through this with Royal Farms on 309, and now we have a request, the exact same request, essentially, that was sent to us just last week for a liquor license to be transferred to the Giant on Cowpath. So we're under the same guidelines as we were for Royal Farms and the same clock. So it's a 45-day clock. The board must make a decision. Our solicitor will certainly walk us through it when we get to that point. This is just a public notice that on January 10th, we will have the public hearing for that application, and then the board will consider approving or denying on the 24th of that month. There'll be an advertisement in the paper. This is just additional public notice. One other additional item, we were scheduled today to settle on the property to improve the Schweiker Park parking lot that we just discussed about a few minutes ago in the budget. And unfortunately, the seller had to ask for an extension. She had to tie up some of the loose ends with her financing and to satisfy some of the requirements from her bank. No issue on our end. We don't plan on beginning any of the work until later in the winter when it starts to get closer to spring. So we have an addendum here to the sales agreement that says the settlement will occur on or before January 23rd, I do believe. And if the board would just approve that so we can sign that, just to make sure the sales agreement is still valid, and then we will make sure we will satisfy that at that point, and I'll let the board know at an upcoming meeting.
All right, so what we need to do is get a motion to extend the sales agreement for that property. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Andrews, second by Commissioner Thomas. Any questions or comments? Folks, if you didn't follow what Aaron was just saying, it just gives us the opportunity to extend the time frame in which to consummate the agreement with the property owner at that location right there by Schweiker Park, where we're able to obtain additional properties which we're going to use primarily for parking, which is going to be great for the people who live near there, especially during softball and baseball season, and football season, actually. So with that, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Aaron, any other matters under the manager's report?
That's all I have, Mr. President, other than Happy New Year to all the residents and commissioners.
All right, citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments? Yes, sir. Please.
My name's Justin Lowe. I live at 2020 Easter Villa, so we're one of the 3 houses that are affected. I guess my question is it's more of a sense of urgency to us for our houses, especially 3 of us. From the front, it might look like the roof doesn't need to be done, but you go to the back, it does need to be done. If someone were to walk up on the roof, would they fall through? Absolutely. That was 3 years ago. So we're trying to figure out what is your guys' deadline if the state doesn't approve it and you guys were to make a decision, because otherwise I have to make a decision to have some major repairs done. And so do my other 2 neighbors.
It's a very fair question, and I know that Aaron has been in contact with each of the families, and as a matter of fact, I've bumped into some of the homeowners as well. You've been remarkably patient while we wait to see if we get this grant, and remarkably understanding with the situation that you're in. Not realizing that you are in a position where you're going to have to make decisions. I don't think we're prepared to have that conversation publicly now, but I think that what we are able to do, I'm not sure if that's because it's a property issue, executive session or not, but I can tell you right now that given the fact that you are in something of a time crunch, we're going to have a conversation, we're going to be able to give you some guidance shortly. Again, we know how remarkably accommodating you have been on this issue. Talk about it. This is not just words that we're saying from the podium. We've talked about you specifically when we've had to have real estate conversations, and so if you can just give us a few more days, literally, for us to figure out exactly what we are going to need to do as far as a time frame. Certainly, we're still hoping that grant is going to come in. That's something that we're hoping for. But we will now put on the front burner what to do if that grant does not come through.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just so you know, they have a 10-month-old son at this point too. So they are kind of living in a house that They're waiting for you to say they can move, so they have it half packed up and half ready to leave, and, you know, the central air broke a year and a half ago. There's a lot of Band-Aids on this place, you know what I mean? So I want you as people to understand where they are. Thank you.
I'm glad you told us, because as sympathetic as we probably think we are, I didn't know that. I didn't know the urgency and the conditions under which you're literally living. Right. Okay.
Got it, we understand.
This is action item number 1 for us in 2018. Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments, citizens' comments? All right, before we adjourn, I need to announce that we are going to go into executive session this evening to discuss personnel. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the last meeting of 2017.
So moved.
By Commissioner Thomas, second by Vice President Hughes. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great holiday. Happy New Year. We'll see you in 2018.